What's up guys, I'm Dean and welcome back to my YouTube channel. What I'm probably best known for on this YouTube channel is my dream DCEU slate, and that now has an interested layer added on top of it because James Gunn's in charge of DC and he's doing his own DCEU slate now. You know, so I'm going to have to figure out how to continue those DCEU slate videos, but that's not the point of this video here. Recently, James Gunn said he would very happily work with the entire cast of Guardians of the Galaxy over at DC, and that got me thinking who each cast member could play in the DC universe. So, I've thought about every Guardian in Guardians of the Galaxy, and I've given them 3 options of who they could play in DC. And I've got to admit, coming up with 3 characters for each actor was definitely difficult to do. So, some of them I'm not super happy with, but out of the 3, I've chosen one, which is my favourite. I've got the hiccups, I don't know if you can tell. I've chosen one, which is my favourite, and then I'll just go through them one by one and give you my thoughts on these castings. And you know what, as we go along, I'll rank them too, so we can see which actor I'd like to see the most, and which actor I'd like to see the least to join the ranks of DC. These hiccups are so annoying. So we're going to be talking about Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Batista, Pom Clementi, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel, Karen Gillen, and Maria Bakalova, who has been cast as Cosmo the Space Dog. We, of course, won't be talking about Sean Gunn or Michael Rooker because they were both in the Suicide Squad, but that doesn't mean they can't return. I'd quite like them to. Calendar Man for the win. But let's start off with our star, shall we? Chris Pratt, quite a divisive actor, and I think there are some roles he could fit in the DCU, but you've got to be careful because while reading stuff online to see what other people thought about Chris Pratt in the DCU, I heard names like, you know, Deathstroke, which is out there, and Hal Jordan, which might work, but not one of my choices. Speaking of my choices, though, my first name is Guy Gardner. He wouldn't be my first choice for this role. I think I'd prefer someone like Domhnall Gleeson, but I think Chris Pratt could do Guy Gardner, not in a lead role, just in a small part in some Green Lantern Corps movie or TV show. I think that could be a lot of fun if he brought that kind of Star-Lord energy to that. And on top of that, I've also got Ted Kord, who is the original Blue Beetle. I would also not want to see this as a lead role, more of a supporting role. And I'm kind of 50-50 on this one, whether I like it or not, because I'm not sure if I can see Chris Pratt playing that kind of business owner genius. I think he could play an interesting Blue Beetle, and I think he'd bring fun to that character, but Ted Kord, I'm not fully convinced yet. But my number one choice for who Chris Pratt should play in the DCEU is, of course, Booster Gold, a superhero that's trying to fake it until he makes it, and is kind of a scam artist, kind of a hustler, and I think this kind of character from the future could be a lot of fun for Chris Pratt if he brings that Star-Lord energy here. So this is my number one choice for Chris Pratt. On to Zoe Saldana. Full disclosure, I did have a lot of trouble casting her because she's an older black actress. I was struggling to think of older black women in DC Comics because there's a lot of them around their 20s and their teens, but Zoe Saldana's coming up on 50, so it took quite a bit of thinking to come up with ideas for her. But I've got 3 options. First up, we've got Newbie, who's a Wonder Woman side character. I think this could be a lot of fun, and I don't know a lot about this character, but from what I've seen, I think she would do quite well against whoever the new Wonder Woman in the DCEU is. And I also put Bumblebee, but I'm not also fully sold on this because Bumblebee has been a part of Teen Titans and is younger, but if we want to make this a more aged, more experienced hero, I think Zoe Saldana could do a great job. To be honest, Zoe Saldana's a great actress. She could do great at whatever we give her, but my number one choice for Zoe Saldana is Hawkwoman. I think she would play a really, really great Hawkwoman. I think that would be a lot of fun to see her tackle a role like that. And Hawkman was so good in Black Adam. Chuck Hawkwoman in, twice the fun. Although with the overall rankings, I think I'd rather see Booster Gold than Hawkwoman. So Chris Pratt's in first place and Zoe Saldana's in second. Next up, we've got Dave Batista. I make no secret in that Dave Batista is one of my favourite actors of all time. I think he's just really great, and I think he's underrated, and all the roles he's been given, he's done really well in. So I've got 3 interesting roles he could fulfill. 2 of them you can probably guess. First up, we've got Kilowog, which he has had some funny things to say about in the past. I think he'd be a really fun Kilowog, but I don't think that is making the best use of his acting ability. I think we can do better than Kilowog. My second choice is quite an unorthodox one. To be honest, I had down someone like, I can't remember, someone like Solomon Grundy or someone like that. But I was listening to the Weekly Planet podcast while I was coming up with ideas for this video. But they said Dave Batista should play Hugo Strange. And originally I was like, no, that's dumb. You want someone like Giancarlo Esposito or Bryan Cranston. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, Dave Batista could actually be quite interesting because Hugo Strange wants to be at his peak physical ability because he wants to be like Batman. And I think Dave Batista does have the acting chops for this. I think he could play a really interesting Hugo Strange. And I know it's unorthodox, but I kind of really want to see this happen now. That isn't my number one choice, though, because I'm still not fully convinced, because I think Hugo Strange is a bit of a weird one. So my number one choice for Dave Batista has to be Bane, probably to nobody's surprise. I just think when you see the performance Tom Hardy gave as Bane, that really interesting performance, I think giving something like that to Dave Batista would be really fun. Dave Batista could play it over the top. He could play it camp and a bit silly while still being serious and threatening and just breaking Batman's back. I think that would be a lot of fun, and I would really like to see Dave Batista as Bane, and I'm going to put him in first place because the more Dave Batista, the better. Next up, we have Pom Clementi, who plays Mantis in Guardians of the Galaxy. I struggled to cast her in the DC universe because I haven't seen her in a lot. I think the only things I've seen her in Guardians of the Galaxy and that really bad Netflix film Thunder Force. So I came up with a few ideas just to kind of test her acting chops, but I'm not convinced she'd be able to do it because I haven't seen how good an actress she is. First up, though, we have Dolphin, who is an Aquaman side character, kind of a throwaway character, the kind of vague character James Gunn seems to like to include. I think Pom Clementi could do a good job in this role in just a small part in an upcoming Aquaman film or something. I don't know loads about the character, to be honest, but I think that could work. Secondly, and hear me out on this, is Katana. We have already had, is it Karen Fukuhara, who's in The Boys and was in Bullet Train, play Katana, and I think she was really great in the role. And if I got to choose, I would rather Karen Fukuhara than Pom Clementi. But I think this would be a role that would really test Pom Clementi's acting ability, and I think Katana is a fun character, and I do hope she returns to the DC universe. My number one choice, though, is Ice, who's a member of the Justice Society and is kind of like a good version of Killer Frost, you know, ice powers, all that sort of thing. DC loves ice powers, and I think giving Pom Clementi this role is a simple role, one she could deliver on, and one which would be a smaller role and not a starring part, and I think that would work, but you know, I don't know enough about Pom Clementi to be desperate to get her in the DC universe. I'm afraid I will put her in last place for now. Next up, we have Bradley Cooper, a man whose face has never appeared in the MCU, but I want his face to appear in the DC universe. He was nearly cast as Green Lantern Hal Jordan back in the day, and I always see him fan cast as Batman. I think he's a bit too old for both of those roles now, as he's around 50, but I've come up with 3 fun ideas I think he could play. First up, we have General Sam Lane, the father of Lois Lane. I think this role will be simple, but I think someone with the charisma of Bradley Cooper could bring a lot of fun to this role. And because Bradley Cooper is fan cast as Batman so much, I thought about it and I thought he could be a fun Owlman, who's basically an alternative universe Batman. I think that would work, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to see. But the role I would like to see him in the most is as Two-Face. Seeing Colin Farrell play a weird little penguin really inspired me for this. I think Bradley Cooper could play a great penguin now I've seen that, but I think seeing him as Two-Face is kind of, you know, the charismatic DA turned villain, I think would be a really interesting move for Bradley Cooper, and I'd really like to see him play a villain. I think him as Two-Face is a lot of fun, but there's lots of actors I could see playing Two-Face in the future. Jon Hamm is another one of my choices, so I'm going to put him in 3rd place. Next up, we have Vin Diesel. Ugh. I don't like Vin Diesel, and I don't want to see him in the DC universe. But the point of this video is I'm casting all of them, so I'll find a role for him. I think the fault with putting Vin Diesel in the DC universe, I don't think they're going to do it, because I think it's going to be a little too close to Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam, because I think they're similar personalities, and I think James Gunn will be smart enough not to cast Vin Diesel. But if he had to, don't show his face. Give him another CGI character like Groot. Here are my 3 options. First up is Solomon Grundy, just a grunting, you know, fool. I think Vin Diesel could voice act this character. I think he's got a good voice for it. I'm not sure what you do about the face, and I'm not sure what you do about the hair, so I'm not fully sold on Solomon Grundy. Next up, I've got Swamp Thing, very similar to Groot. Not a lot of spoken words, very nature-related. I think it is a clear choice, but I'm not sold on that either. Finally, if Vin Diesel had to appear in the DCEU, I would put him as the voice of Gorilla Grodd. I know, definitely not my first choice for Gorilla Grodd, but if he had to put in the DCU, if you force my hand, I would cast him as Gorilla Grodd, because I think it's a simple role, and I think he's got a good voice for it, and he won't have to be on set, he'd just have to show up and record his lines. I know you probably guessed it, but Vin Diesel's in last place on who I want to see most in the DC universe. 2 actresses left. Next up, we've got Karen Gillen, an actress I adore, and I'd really love to see her put in something mainstream which really tests her acting chops, because I know she can do it. I just want her to be given the right role that could show it off. First up, I've got Cheetah down. I know we saw Cheetah recently, played by Kristen Wiig, and nobody liked it, so I think you could very easily recast Karen Gillan, and I think she'd do really well. I'd love to see her play a villain, and I think this kind of role would be different enough from Nebula for me to enjoy the acting performance. But I don't know what's happening with Wonder Woman, and do I really want to see Cheetah again this soon? Probably not. I've also got Karen Gillan down as Batwoman. Back in the day, I think she would have done a great Batgirl, but she is sadly too old now. I think Batwoman would be a really interesting character for her to portray, kind of a noble superhero like that, joining the Bat family, bouncing off the other members of the Bat family. I think would be really interesting to see. But once again, I think she's too young for this role, which is funny. I think she's in the in-between stage of Batgirl and Batwoman. But she could do it. I think she really could do a great job here. But speaking of Batman, my number one choice has to be Poison Ivy. I think Poison Ivy is a great villain and one we have to see in live action again, because we all know Uma Thurman definitely didn't do her justice. Karen Gillan would nail this role. I think she could kind of do this charismatic, seductive thing really well, and I think it would require Karen Gillan to give a different type of performance from her that I haven't seen before, and one I'd be really interested to see. You know what, I'm going to put Karen Gillan in second place. Chris Pratt would be great as Booster Gold, but there's a few other actors I can see in line for that. Okay, moving on to our final actor. We've got Maria Bakalova, who's only appeared so far in Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, but she's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, playing Cosmo the Space Dog, voicing Cosmo the Space Dog. You probably know her from Borat 2, playing Borat's daughter. I've got 3 characters I would quite like to see her play. First up is Black Canary. I think this one will be interesting to see. I'm not sure if she has the edge that is required for this character, but I think she could do it. I think she was really good in Borat 2, and I'd like to see her, be tested with her acting ability more moving forward. I've also got down Starfire. She may be about 5 years too old for this role, because she is, in her mid-20s, and there are conversations to be had about what race Starfire should be cast as. I'm not sold on this Starfire thing, but if it happened, I don't think I'd be upset. I think I'd be like, oh, this is interesting, let's see where it goes. But this one might be controversial. The character I would most like to see Maria Bakalova play, and one I could genuinely see happening, is Maria Bakalova as Supergirl. I think she's got the look for it. I think she's got the acting ability for it. And depending who they cast as Superman, I think she could be a really good fit for the DC universe. I think I'm going to put her in 5th place, though, because despite the fact she is a great actress, I think there's a myriad of great female actors who could play Supergirl, and I think they've got lots of options moving forward with that character. Anyway, that brings us to the end. Here is the final ranking. Take a good look at that. Dave Batista was always going to win, and Vin Diesel was always going to lose. That's just the way it is. I really enjoy doing this kind of fan casting experiment thing. If you want to just see me fan cast the DC universe as a whole moving forward, I'd happily make that into a video or a series of videos. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. Comment down below who you think the Guardians should play in the DC universe, and which ones you want to see in the DC universe, which ones you want to avoid. And like this video, and subscribe. They're the things I'm supposed to say at the end of YouTube videos. Yes. Okay. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.